As it appears the Micah and Derrick's mics are not working right now. When you guys come in the studio... Yep, sorry about that, guys. You're listening to KPFT, your local Houston radio. We are happy to be here. This is Freethinker Radio. I am Johnny, and sitting next to Micah.
Hey, give me my mic. All right, glad to be here. I don't know what's going on. We're going to figure that out. But we did have some interesting music there. Rocket Summer, which is actually a short story by Ray Bradbury. That music is from an act out of Texas, the first song, Rocket Summer. And they're on Billboard right now doing really well. And we're going to get into a lot more local music as the show goes on. But we got a lot of news to get into as well. The second song was from I guess you could call it underground compilation from the 90s. Rome Burns, not often heard on the radio, but we like to bring you samples here on the FM side of where we go on the HD, where we have a 2-hour show every Monday from 4 to 6 p.m. We'd love for you to listen there as well and call in and get to talking to us about events, news, and everything else you want to. Rome Burns and the Rocket Summer. That was that band. That first one was named after a Ray Bradbury. I don't know if it was named after a Ray Bradbury, but it shares a name with a Ray Bradbury story. So I thought that was interesting too.
That's nice.
Glad to have you back.
Yeah, man, it's good to be here for another week of Freethinker Radio. As Micah was just saying, the different topics we cover here at kpft.org. And of course, if you happen to be a new listener or you're listening to this on the archive and you're a new listener, check out kpft.org and you can find out more all about the station and the different shows that run here. This is, of course, Houston's only commercial-free, corporate-free, community-supported radio. So without your support, whether that means sharing, donating, investing in the station, or some other form of support, we depend on you to do what we do. So I just want to make that clear again. And on Freethinker Radio today, we're going to cover quite a bit of information. I know there's lots happening here in Houston. For one, I think the main thing Micah and I have been wanting to talk about, and as somebody just noted here in the station, our show is probably one of the first places in the city that was immediately on the case of the Harding Street raid, the Tuttle raid, as it sometimes is known. This is the death of 2 Houstonians, Dennis Tuttle, Regina Nicholas, and their dog, here in Houston, Texas, back January 28th. So we were one of the first people to not only call out that, hey, this doesn't seem like we're getting all the facts, but to stay on the case.
And you actually went out there to the Tuttle house and witnessed for yourself the holes.
Yeah, there's holes on the outside of the house where a forensic pathologist and a forensic investigator who was hired by the family, by Regina Nicholas's family, he came in. And this guy's worked for the state. He's got, all kinds of history and expertise in this area and time in this field. And so he found that the shots that were the fatal wound that killed Regina Nicholas when she was sitting on her couch on 5 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon, it came from outside of the building, people shooting at her from, outside. So the story that we were told that the cops came in and then Dennis Tuttle started shooting at them and the cops had a gunfight with him while Regina Nicholas, ran in and tried to tackle an officer. Like, none of these things seem to line up with the facts that we are still, just getting to this day. So there's we've known from the beginning. That's why Micah and Jack and I have all stayed on this topic and continued to focus on it. And as Micah said, I did go out there.
It was no special power that let us know. It was just reasoning about what we are typically told by these people. Wouldn't you say, Derrick? Like a pattern of behavior almost.
Yeah, and the pattern of behavior that we know that HPD has committed violence against Houstonians in the past, but also the response that was pretty immediate from the president of the police union.
Yeah,
Joe Gimaldi, who was pretty much just accusatory from the beginning, saying any of those people on social media who are out there spreading, talking crap about cops, we got your number, we're coming for you, and say they were going to use social media to find people. And it was just, instead of being like, we're going to get to the bottom of this, officers have been shot, 2 Houstonians are dead, it was just, very defensive, like right off the bat.
Almost like a kid, when you come in and they're like,
Well,
I wasn't doing anything.
So I honestly think that hopefully we will find out more, because I guess the latest news is, to actually get to the point here, is that the officers, Stephen Bryant and Gerald Goins, who were involved in this, were both arrested by the FBI this week. And that was a pretty big step, because we know that the FBI, the Justice Department, had been investigating. We know that the DA was investigating, HPD claiming, their own investigation. And the officers were already facing charges, but now they've been arrested by FBI, which means they're facing federal charges. In addition to that, we have the arrest of one of the neighbors, and we got a little bit more of the piece of the puzzle. And I will say again, I'm pretty sure we've mentioned this here on Freethinker Radio over the years, and definitely didn't hear this on the Chronicle or Channel 13 or anything like that, that we were when I went out there, as Micah mentioned, when I went there to the protests and saw the house and met some of the neighbors, they mentioned that, off the record, somebody had told me that when they went around the neighborhood and wanted to hold a vigil for Dennis Tuttle and Regina Nicholas, all the neighbors were down with it except for one neighbor. One neighbor was very much like, screw them, we're not going to help them out, and apparently had a history of not getting along with the Tuttles and with Miss Nicholas. So there was already some suspicion whether that neighbor had anything to do with it, because we know that the original complaint against the Tuttles was based on some anonymous call to HPD. And so that neighbor, that woman, has now been arrested by the FBI, too, for lying to 911, lying to emergency dispatchers about drugs and weapons being at the Tuttle's house. So, I mean, we have a little bit more of the facts, like I said, but I don't think we still have all the details, because some unanswered questions for me, Micah, are why has Acevedo from the very beginning been lying, and I say lying, choosing my words carefully. Why has he refused to answer any of the family's questions? Why did they immediately take their side, and why did they never offered the family an apology. They continue to stand by their story, and HPD, even to this point now, still isn't acknowledging that, okay, we made some mistakes. Acevedo from the very beginning was saying, I was there within 15 minutes.
I think it's the troubling aspect of having, whether it was this case or any other sort of situation, a dogmatic worldview. They're holding this dogmatically that these people are guilty, or they were holding it dogmatically that they're guilty. Hey, it looks like we might have some no longer technical difficulties here. So I think that it's really something like that, I mean, it's that team mentality, the collective think type of mentality, that the group is telling me this. Never mind that there's individuals on the other end of this. And we're going to get to the same sort of universal aspect between this failed Tuttle Street raid and some, I guess you could call it public school abuses later, where being told to do something by the collective, or your loyalty to the collective, is overriding some people's rational love for human beings and the respective rights that they might have. And it seems like this Tuttle Street thing, at least with Officer Goins, is a prime example of that, coming, up in this instance.
Yeah, I want to add to that, Micah, just to kind of emphasize the importance of the Harding Street raid and the Tuttle raid. It's because, again, HPD continued to cover for the officers and say that nothing wrong was done. Even to the point once the officers were arrested, they just claimed that it's just these two officers. How come HPD never charged this neighbor? Obviously they had, I'm assuming, some of the similar information or same information. I definitely think we still don't have the full picture, but I do want to say, thank you for one, KPFT giving us a home where we can question things like this and not be called crazy, that, hey, maybe we don't necessarily want to blindly trust the authorities in this case based on their history, and to every one of the listeners who has called in and expressed their views over the last, 8, 9 months, 10 months.
It's really meant a lot, because
kept the story alive.
I think what you're saying about the views of the listeners have really helped reassure us that talking about this is the right way, rather than just holding any sort of dogmatic position, that talking about it is, because we know a lot of these callers that call in, like maybe 30% of them call again and again, and we are thankful for them being there consistently. They're supporters. But my point is, we've heard some of these callers, be antithetical to our views in some ways, and some be pro. But I would say across the board, people stood up and did not like that response from HPD or the whole mess. And I think it was reassuring to see that. And if we didn't talk about it, if we did just like the union president said, and shut up, Gimaldi, was that his name?
Joe Gimaldi.
Yeah, and shut up about it, then, I'm sure that in lots of authoritarian regimes would love that.
Yeah, thankfully people didn't shut up and they kept asking questions. So we will continue to follow this story. And now, just repeating, the FBI arresting 2 former HPD officers and a neighbor, and a little bit more of the truth coming out about the Tuttle raid. What do you think about this, Johnny? I mean, we've been following it since the beginning. Did you see the news when this happened?
I didn't see the news. I just read an article on it today. I think it's good that at least the federal government is coming in and trying to clean up some of the mess. I just hope there's some kind of conviction, because the whole thing just stinks like you know what. And
yeah, hopefully it's not a case of the federal government coming in and then nothing happened.
You talked about Patricia, didn't you?
There had to be some kind of outside investigation, which was clear to me, because the people affected by it had to fund their own investigation. That's what bothered me the most.
And each step has been resisted. We were talking about that and the resistance that came out even on that investigation. And, you know, this is something that was speculated early on. 53-year-old woman named Patricia Garcia has been arrested in connection with the raid. Garcia is accused of conveying false information by making several fake 911 calls. Oh, they were real calls.
She's just a normal citizen.
She was a neighbor. And this is what I was saying. I don't know if you heard a couple minutes ago. We were told way back when on one of our shows that the neighbor, and apparently this is a neighbor, there was only one neighbor when they went around asking all the neighbors if they could hold a vigil in the neighborhood for Dennis and Regina, who was like, you know, heck no, I don't want anything to do with them. And I was told by somebody, like, oh, they had a history of something going on. People already suspected that she was involved, and now we know that was
She told the police they had machine guns in there, these drug addicts.
Spooky. We just don't want to set a precedent where you can have some kind of grievance with your neighbor and then call the cops and they, you know, kick the door in first reaction or something like that. You know, hopefully we go off more evidence than random neighbor call.
Yeah, and confidential informants. Think about what kind of world it is where the people that speak out are confidential. The speak out, you know, that are your people that, what is it, like, you're supposed to be able to see your accused in court, right? But you got confidential informants, and you've got anonymous tips, like this Garcia lady was. So you have no vision, no transparency of the action that kicks in the door, that triggers it like that. And, you know, in the long run, what happens? Garcia may get 5 years in prison for her role.
Yeah, you know, the thing is, and I want to make this point that we've talked about before, Micah, that if the cops, and I think you even said this too, Johnny, if the cops hadn't been shot, then we probably would have had no idea that this was even going on. You know what I mean? Like, because they wouldn't have made a deal if it was just the cops raided the house of some drug dealers with weapons and this and that, and they had to kill them in a shootout.
It would have fit that was like standard cookie cutter.
That's what I'm saying. They could wrap that up in a nice little package. But instead,
the question, has it been done before?
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe something,
is it happening in your city?
Injured? Yeah.
Well, and this is why cases, I think it said it was something like 2,000 cases that Goins and Bryant were involved in were now being reviewed, and potentially people having cases dropped against them because these cops might have fabricated evidence in the past. So
it's at least retroactively making people take a look at some other cases. I mean, people need to remember that you are Dennis Tuttle. You are Regina Tuttle. You know, like, you can have this happen to you.
Or you might even be, you know, this may sound a bit far-fetched, but as we're talking about this, you might even be one of those 5 officers that was hurt besides Gerald Goins, besides the crooks. You might even be the Stephen Bryant guy who tried to back his friend Gerald Goins and ends up lying about the situation also, who could at that point choose not to do that. You could, you know, these are why it's important to hold these people accountable, because otherwise you could just be like a foot soldier that wakes up in a war zone because you were serving these people above you, thought you were protecting some woman's daughter from machine gun heroin dealers. You know, I mean, you could be that guy. I mean, I've seen stories where that guy's the hero.
It's true, and just awareness of the situation should, you know, put some perspective on everybody, because these people are dead. They're not going to get their day in court.
I think we all have a lot more power than we think, and it just comes in different moments. You know, and, you know, they step up for right, and it's about your character that you're building. So, yeah, it's exciting. I see the phone lines are lighting up. We have a guest. We have a very exciting show today.
I want to mention one thing real quick, Micah, before we get to our guest and a phone call. I know that you have been before, and I've been before, but the art crawl is taking place this weekend.
Oh, yeah, Houston. There's more going on.
27th Annual Artist Warehouse Art Crawl, Saturday, November 23rd. And I just want to mention, because one of our friends
really nice graphic.
And talented artist, Lex Simone, has a space over at the Hardy and Nance Studios, and I believe she'll be showcasing along with lots and lots of other artists all day tomorrow at the Hardy and Nance Studios. This is the 26th Annual Houston Art Crawl.
So art goes on in Houston, music goes on in Houston, occasional shootings go on.
Hey, it's a big city. We've been told by the people not to talk over each other because it's hard to hear us.
Yeah, well, we're excited.
Don't get so excited, you guys. I was excited too. Let's control ourselves.
No, we can't.
So yeah, go out to the art crawl if you can. Check out Lex Simone. Tell her that Freethinker Radio sent you. And so let's talk with our guests. Let's get into it.
Oh, yes, for sure. We've had this guest before. You remember our friend, right, Johnny? Here we are with Jonathan from Comedy Hub. And,
Comedy guy.
Yeah, how's it going, guys?
You're now that you've been here twice, you're our resident comedian.
That's right. Let's switch gears from multiple homicide to comedy. This is right how we do it.
I like how Derrick tried to do that, and he squeezed in that the art
nice
crawl.
segue.
Art is a halfway point between murder and comedy, I think.
Yeah, there's suffering there. Yeah, thanks, guys, for having me back. How y'all been?
Been good. How have you been? I've been seeing your events. It looks like more and more people are becoming aware of them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the goal. I mean, spreading the good word, coming out here, and
you've got one
Instagram
tonight.
and all that.
I
Yeah, I have a show tonight, man.
It's through Comedy Hub Houston, right?
Yeah, my Instagram, Facebook, all that's Comedy Hub Houston.
Gotcha.
Website's comedyhubhtx.com. But yeah, show tonight. It's a drinking game show. It's a really fun monthly one that we do. It's kind of just like a really ruckus frat party for comedians where we play beer pong and we roast each other and we get the audience involved. It's kind of like a really it's a really interesting like alternative comedy idea where it's very interactive, and that's a lot of what we're trying to do is bring some different kind of activities to the comedy world.
And where's it at again?
It's at Rec Room Theater. It's 100 Jackson Street. It's like 2 blocks up from Minute Maid Park.
Okay, cool. So right in downtown.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea, at least the word you said, of interactive, meaning not computer, but meaning interactive, like people interacting.
Yeah, you actually have to come and show up and get off your couch and and tell Netflix, no, I'm no longer still watching.
I mean, there's things
How
going
is that
on.
competing with Netflix? Is that
It's tough, but I think like a lot of what I'm doing right now is like performance art, like so I'm also running the bar and events for the Rec Room Theater as a whole right now, and you can't replace an actual theater performance or an actual stand-up show live or something like this that's interactive with something that you watch on TV. I mean, it's just so different because, you're there. You really feel the emotion. You can actually be a part of it in a way.
Do you see the people that recognize that fact? Because we've talked about music in the past and that similar thing.
Oh, definitely.
Do you see this? And I think that's like when you see that, like with the comedy shows, you realize what fruit you're really bringing to the people of Houston. I think maybe some people have that recognition that you're talking about, that wow, this is a lived experience, life is going on in this instance.
It's a real memory.
Yeah.
Versus I think when you watch this on TV or whatever, it's not the same kind of memory. It's like, oh, I listened to this album once. No, I was there.
Yeah.
And like that's the part of it too, is like your emotion as a member of the audience feeds into the show. Right, so your response is a part of the show just as much as their acting or their, musicianship or.
So it's not
comedy
completely canned; it's kind of organic. It's got to shape itself also.
It's almost. It's almost the comedy equivalent of the punk rock singer who hands you the mic in the middle of the show, even though you don't know the lyrics. You just get to be the singer for that bit, and maybe they give people opportunity to get on stage and do some funny stuff too.
And even if you don't get the mic or what, if we're to say, but just.
The energy.
Just your laughter or, your sympathy or whatever it is when you're at a live performance, that's a part of the show. It's candid as well. So.
Nice.
So tell us about some of the performers, if any of the performers.
We've got a lot of cool stuff coming on. So like right now at the theater, we've been running all month a play called The Children. It's really, I think you guys would really actually enjoy it. It's like a post-apocalyptic sci-fi play set in like a near dystopian future after
my kind of stuff
about like a nuclear reactor exploding and these nuclear physicists that have to deal with that. But yeah, that's going on this month. It ends the first week of December.
That sounds really interesting. So you're involved in more than the comedy thing.
Oh yeah, I'm involved with the whole theater as a whole.
Nice.
But then I do my comedy shows too. So like tonight we have drinking game show that starts at 10 right after the play. If anyone wants to come out. You can get your tickets.
That play sounds interesting.
You can get all that information on the Rec Room, recroomarts.org.
Nice. Thank you.
For the play and for the tickets for the show for tonight.
I'm going to post that on my
and
Facebook
then
right now.
My big baby project is I write, direct, and host a bi-monthly sketch comedy show. I don't think I've told you guys about before, but it's kind of like Saturday Night Live. That's kind of like the formula.
Cool.
It's got stand-up comedy, sketch comedy, video skits, animation, musical guest. What else we got in there? All kinds of song and dance. It's crazy. It's a huge variety
like a
show.
Full production.
Yeah, it really is.
So
and
do they always happen at the same place, or do you happen to?
Yeah, I mostly do everything at the Rec Room.
Great.
That's 100 Jackson Street. occasionally we move it around to some bigger venues, but that's mostly where I operate out of.
Cool.
That'll be on the 30th if anyone wants to come check that out. 2 shows that night, 7:30 and 9:30 p.m.
So how many days a week can people come hang out with you and hear different like comedy performances?
Sure. Typically, we're open Wednesday through Saturday, about 7 to 11. Just a couple hours every day, 4 nights a week at the theater. Every night's a little bit something different. Like when we have the play running, that's running those 4 days, and then after the play, I'll usually have some kind of comedy. So like Thursday nights is always this show called The Mystery Box, which is a lot of fun. And people should come check out. It's a challenge. It's what it is. It's a prop comedy show for non-prop comics, and so we let them do time, and then after they do time, they have to dig in this box. It's full of just props, and then they have to like riff on them.
Nice.
And this is it's really challenging for these guys to try improv, basically.
So when you're watching it, you're seeing someone having to go through that. It's
right.
Not, and it, so it's hard to explain the fun of that. I've seen that type of thing before, where they had to make little skits around a plunger or this or that, and it really shows you, kind of like, I'm not involved in sports, but when you watch a really good football play or something and you just see the human athleticism in it, it's like those things. You just see the pure creativity and you're like, what's going on? And the prop almost sometimes becomes just a prop. The story becomes so interesting, and you're wondering why they're waving a plunger around or whatever.
Well, and it doesn't have to be a plunger. That's the beauty of it. I mean, it's like when you're a kid and you use your imagination, and a plunger could be anything. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It could be a sword
becomes that.
Exactly. And that's one of the beauties of improv, but also like when these stand-up comics aren't used to doing it, like you said, it's fun to watch them challenge themselves, and
it's almost like
they really enjoy it too. You know?
See them growing,
right?
So that's another thing that this is bringing to Houston, a chance for thespians and comedians to grow and to do their chops like that. And as you said before, in your personal experience, you went out to California and in order to do parts of that. And so it's just kind of you're part of the growth of Houston as a cultural event.
Yeah, well, that's what we're trying more. I mean, that's really like the mission of what we've been doing, is to, like I said before, stop exporting all of our talent to Chicago and New York and California, because this is a big city, and we can help build the opportunities here. And if we can do that, then people don't have to like abandon their home and their family to go pursue that dream. Hopefully, we can help those dreams happen here.
Absolutely. Anything else you want to leave us with, brother, before we start? I think we're almost at the half-hour point. You're listening to Freethinker Radio here on 90.1 KPFT. We're with the Comedy Hub. Yeah,
Comedy Hub Houston, Jonathan Fleischner. Thanks. Yeah, no, just thanks for having me out. If people can follow Comedy Hub Houston on Instagram and Rec Room on Instagram. If anyone's looking for some new music, I got 2 albums that came out this past year on iTunes and Spotify. Just look up Tender Gents.
Tender Gents.
It's some weird like indie punk blues stuff. So
we'll throw some of that on the show.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. But yeah, thanks for having me back anytime you guys want to talk about anything, man.
Yeah, don't be a stranger. Hit us up. And, sometimes we have more times and other times we have less. So we're definitely glad that you came in. We were kind of rolling with some punches early on.
It sounds like there's a lot going on over there at the Rec Room, though. I definitely recommend everybody check it out and go say what's up to Jonathan, see what's happening there. Whether you're into comedy, it sounds like all kinds of performance art happening, man. And I agree with you, too. I think Micah and I have talked about this over the years, from way back in 2011 with Local Live Houston to things like the Counter Crawl and other, things and time periods that have come, that instead of leaving and going to Seattle or Austin or LA or New York or somewhere where things are easy or, kind of established, that it's cool to see more people over the, last years like choose to stay and build. So appreciate that.
I appreciate you guys, man.
No doubt. Right. If you follow us on Facebook at Freethinker Radio, I'm going to share the page out for the Comedy Hub and Rec Room, so y'all can follow and make sure you get out when you can, because I know not everybody can. Tonight that might sound great, but maybe you're already obligated. So
check out
you can get it in your rotation.
All right, we're going to go to some music here. Johnny's got a couple songs for us. We'll be right back. This is Freethinker Radio, 90.1 KPFT Houston.
Down, down, down.
All right, good stuff. I'm glad to be back. Love the music. Tell us who we were listening to, Johnny.
That first band was a new band that I just found called the Daphne 3. They're actually right here from Houston. And, Jumbotron's playing a show with them December 13th at Rudyard's. So not for a little while. I'm sure I'll tell you about it later.
Right here in Montrose. Pretty cool.
Yeah, it's some good pop punk if you're into that kind of thing. What was the next band, Derrick?
They're called Hail the Sun, and they just played here in Houston recently, so I threw them out there. But hey Johnny, don't you have another show to mention coming up at the House of Jay around Christmas?
We do have a show tonight. Oh yeah, we have Folksmith also coming up, which is a big charity festival we're doing for I believe it's a Houston Food Bank is where they're donating the food.
I think so.
I haven't looked in a second. I know Whitney does it every year, so it's going to be Days and Days and Stizza from Leftover Crack.
Yeah, I saw that. Cool, man. Should be a good
It's going to be a crazy night, yeah, at a house nonetheless.
All right, well, let's continue on. Let's cover some more stories. You're listening to Freethinker Radio 90.1 KPFT Houston. We just talked with Jonathan of the Comedy Hub, and he's talking about lots of things he has coming up. We're going to play some of his music in just a little bit.
I think I might have found it. Is this it, Jonathan?
Yeah, that's my first EP, but yeah, that's on there.
Tender
Nice.
Gents. So we'll be playing some of them soon, if not today, definitely in the coming weeks. And we want to remind you, if you have music or events to submit, you can always contact us through Facebook, the Freethinker Radio Facebook page, or of course call into the station. You can even come here if you're in the neighborhood and tell them to put it in the Freethinker Radio box, and we will get it.
I mean, that guy that we just were playing to start with, the Summer Rocket, that we got this way. I think the last 3 shows we've been consistently able to get out new music that was sent to us, so we love to put that music out there that we get. We find something good on it, and we share it up, and then the people, sometimes they tell us they want more of it, and that's rewarding.
Micah, I'm going to hit a couple of stories, just
Let's
some
get into
headlines, because I don't want to take up. There's one main story I'd like to cover with you and go back and forth, but these I'll just throw some headlines out. These are related to my ongoing surveillance privacy concerns that grow daily as we move closer and closer to the smart cities, including that just in the last couple of days, Verizon announced that they have expanded their 5G smart city network in Houston to mobile, so it's over there by the soccer stadium. It's by Minute Maid Park and a few other spots like that. Slowly expanding around the city. And while that's going on, activists over in San Diego who already have some of this smart city technology are raising awareness about the smart lights that they've put out there. And these have also been put in places around Houston. I don't know that they're outfitted with the same software that they are in San Diego, but these, quote, smart street lights are supposed to be, brighter and things of that sort, but they can also be outfitted with technology that can either they have called them shotgun detectors, like say in an area where there might be violent crime. If they detect a shotgun or a gunshot, they automatically start recording. But we've already seen in the years past that they can record all the time, so conversations of people walking nearby. And it's been nearly 3 years since San Diego approved the project, which was initially presented as a cost-saving plan to replace lights on some 8,000 poles with energy-efficient LED lighting. But in addition to those energy-efficient LED lights, they also added these sensors. 4,200 street light poles with cameras, microphones, and other technology that collect data, pedestrian and vehicle movements, parking availability, temperature, humidity, and other real-time data that is being used by the police, by public safety, and elsewhere. And we now know that San Diego police have access to the videos, which were used in more than 160 investigations between August 2018 and September 2009. So some folks would see this and say, okay, well, it sounds like the presence of those computers or cameras and recording devices are making it easier for the police to catch bad guys. But Micah, haven't we been told in the past that just giving the authorities, ability to do whatever they want in order to catch bad guys doesn't usually end up good for those who care about freedom? I mean, it seems like they kind of take whatever they can.
Give an inch, take a mile.
Give them an inch and they will take what they can. Give you another one here. This is coming from New York Times. Georgetown University School of Law privacy expert Claire Garvey warns about facial recognition technology, and she says, quote, "We've become increasingly comfortable with facial recognition technology. We use it to unlock our phones and skip the security line at the airport, but the convenience of facial recognition is blinding us to its dangers." Claire Garvey put together a video that explains why you should be concerned about the growing use of this tech, even if you think you have, quote, "nothing to hide." According to her, police databases now contain images of nearly half of all Americans. She argues that without some restrictions on facial recognition, we are rapidly hurtling towards a Chinese-style surveillance state. As she puts it, Americans are basically in a perpetual police lineup. The digital equivalent of police walking through a crowd and yanking each of our IDs out of our pockets. You could be picked out, investigated, possibly arrested, and sent to jail. And that's a violation of your privacy and your Fourth Amendment protection against unreasonable search. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. That one, and then one other surveillance one I'll throw at you guys, just to get you thinking about all of the stuff surrounding us. Facial recognition, smart streetlights, and this one, 5 different U.S. senators demanding that Amazon disclose how Ring, which is their brand name for the doorbell camera, which has become increasingly popular in certain neighborhoods around Houston. I noticed this while I was campaigning, while we were out there block walking, how many houses have the rings on their houses now. I didn't realize. I'm kind of a hermit, so I don't go out often.
Sometimes, yeah.
I go out and I'm like, oh my God, the technology is everywhere.
It's a lot.
It's so
a lot
fast.
Of people have it.
My parents have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's so tell your parents about this. So U.S. lawmakers are demanding that Amazon tell them more about Ring. Of course, Amazon owns Ring, who is producing the majority of these. Amazon Surveillance Network, which is it's a facial recognition database known as Recognition with a K. And the lawmakers are basically saying we need to know what Amazon has, what they're using this data with, because it's kind of created this backdoor where instead of, for example, if a cop wanted to get, some footage from your camera and your house or something, he'd have to get a warrant if you wanted to come in your house and see anything. But in this case, since Amazon is already partnering with law enforcement using recognition, their facial recognition software, they're basically backdooring giving the cops access to Ring. People are voluntarily using the thing and they're scooping up the data and then they're giving it to the cops.
There's some kind of terms and conditions that say it in there.
Well, you're basically agreeing that they can take whatever they record there and use it how they want. And so the cops don't have to go to a judge to get a warrant. Instead, they can just go directly to Amazon. And the other thing is now Amazon's talking about outfitting these Ring doorbell cameras with facial recognition software, which would essentially be, imagine just everywhere you walk, it's just like tracking you and your face. And again, the police can just access that and just keep growing. The FBI already has a facial recognition database that covers the majority of Americans that they've been keeping secret for years and won't reveal anything about. So this is kind of an indirect way. And in cities like Detroit, where there has been high crime, they've started projects called the Green Light Project, where they'll tell businesses who have been robbed in the past, like, hey, we're going to put a green light above your door, and that'll let people know that you have a camera that is being fed to a 24-hour CCTV circuit that the police have access to. And so it's supposed to encourage safetyness in the community. And HPD has a real-time crime center that operates in a similar way. We don't yet have the Green Light program where they're encouraging businesses to give the cops access to their cameras, and it's voluntarily so far. But the Ring doorbell thing is basically the same thing. People are voluntarily putting them on just to keep their homes safe. I have had people tell me that they've caught criminals, coming by their house and things like that. But now we have lawmakers sending a letter to Jeff Bezos, CEO of Amazon, asking them to discuss the public and potential security vulnerabilities in Ring system and the sharing of Americans' home security footage with research and development teams. So
is this not kind of like 1984, where we're going to need just to find that little corner of our room? We're not being surveilled, because it's just regardless of whatever they might want to use it for, it's still it's just kind of weird.
In 1984, he talked about the telescreens that were just this flat screen,
never turn them off, right?
But it's a smart TV that we know is listening.
We got the
time,
Samsung wall now.
Yeah, the Samsung wall, and all the documents are out that we know that these devices
and now the street poles
can
have
monitor
ears.
you, and
Alexa and all that.
So in a lot of ways, it's being done voluntarily. I'm going to wrap this story up real quick and just read the letter. It says, quote, millions of consumers use Ring's products and services, which include internet-connected video doorbells, spotlight cameras, and alarm systems. Ring's devices routinely upload data, including video records, to Amazon servers. Amazon, therefore, holds a vast amount of deeply sensitive data and video footage detailing the lives of Americans in and near their homes. If hackers or foreign actors were to gain access to this data, it would not only threaten the privacy and safety of the impacted Americans, it could also threaten U.S. national security. The letter says, by foreign intelligence services that might amplify the impact of espionage and influence operations. So, yeah, just showing you that there's some realistic concerns around this technology. And we're right here at Black Fridays next week, right? So next week when we're having the show, people are going to be at the stores throwing this stuff in their baskets, throwing an Alexa in their basket, throwing the smart TV in the Ring and all this stuff. And it's, they're the hot commodities that everybody wants.
Yeah, I actually just had a strange thought. Micah, you might remember from last week, we were talking about, what was it? We were talking about how a lot of the cops end up going after, petty criminals to kind of pay the bills with their quotas and things like that. Imagine with this technology, it might not even necessarily be targeted towards the big crimes, but they might be able to get everyone who's avoiding their speeding tickets and all that kind of stuff in a streamlined way.
Yeah, definitely at least know when you're there to go serve you your warrants or whatever, you know.
That's what I'm saying. It would be interesting to see if they would focus on that aspect more.
You know, and the other thing about the hacker stuff, and then I'll move on from this and throw it your way, Micah, that there's a couple of websites you can find, and they're not even on like the quote-unquote dark web, deep web, whatever, but just websites where you can watch people's devices. So a lot of these things are unsecured, and if you don't know how to encrypt them, which isn't too difficult, but most people don't take any extra effort. So I'm talking about like the baby camera that's in the other room, the doorbell camera, and there's literally websites where you can just cycle through different live feeds of people's like bedrooms or whatever that are open that people have hacked, and that you can literally just like, no, go to the next one, go to the next
monitors,
one. Baby
like
monitors,
that.
like, you know, doorbell cameras, CCTVs, and just different. You'll see like a warehouse. There's nothing going on, but you could literally just click through there because
maybe you want to look at what's going on in Guam.
Yeah, whatever. And because they're so just they're not encrypted, they're not protected, and you have agencies like the FBI out there saying that the people shouldn't have access to encryption because it's, you know, encouraging terrorism.
Stop us from seeing.
So,
I mean, then like a Fourth Amendment might mean something, right? You might have
being able to protect yourself.
Yeah, say come back with a warrant. I wish I had subscribed to the Chronicle at this point, because there's a nice new article out there called "Houston Botched Drug Raid Was Not the First." And it talks about Michelle Brooks over on Tuam Street, where her door was hanging off the hinges, her furniture in shambles back in 2014. That's where Gerald Goins had been before. And, you know, it is interesting to see this finally come out a little bit more. I know we've covered it already, but it's interesting to see now how different aspects of it are coming out to show that it's deeper, broader reaching, etc. Mm-hmm. And, you know, sometimes it is a little frustrating when you've been talking about something and people are like, what, huh? And then all of a sudden mainstream and everybody's like, yeah, well, that's what KPFT is here for, to talk about the news that ahead of time, do a little bit of analysis, occasionally discover some things.
Especially when people want you to drop something or move on. And like I said earlier, I think it really goes out to everybody who's on the internet, on KPFT and elsewhere, who've been out there asking these questions. I know there's a few other local Houston-based YouTube channels that have really been on the cops and following up and trying to get open records requests related to the Tuttles. And if you imagine that none of us were even giving this any attention, then there wouldn't be much of a story here, and the whole thing could have been swept under the rug.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, no matter what happens as far as the justice for the family, it's important that people recognize this example, this template of how things happen. What about I'm not going to go too deep into this. We talked about it last episode on FM. The state's going to take over Houston's independent school district. They call this one of these things, these phrases that we watch for, unprecedented takeover. So, yeah, goodbye having elected powers over your school. And, you know, I kind of want to say that right before we get into an article. And, you know, this is pretty...
Well, can I ask you a question on that, Micah? What do you think about that whole thing, just briefly?
What about the vaccine policy if the government's running?
Well, I mean, on the whole school thing, one of the things I've seen is people saying, well, look, if the state takes over, one of the considerations they've made is handing it over to like a private entity, and then, you know, schools becoming charter schools. And there's a lot of folks who are against privatization, who just kind of knee-jerk are against anything private. So they're like, no, we don't need charter schools. And I can see good or bad, you know, from there. But what do you think generally about that? Like, is it... Obviously, I would consider local to be the best, you know, but if the city's not, or the district isn't able to...
Well, they're failing. They were saying they're failing a test, and who put that test on them?
Well, and this is one of the things that I honestly said during the mayor campaign when this issue came up, is that maybe we need to rethink the idea that, you know, scoring a certain number on tests is the best way to measure people's success. You know, or even the fact that, and some people are kind of looking at me like I was crazy, but hey, maybe even the fact that some of these kids don't need to go to college and that, or maybe even finish high school as a measurement of their worth. You know, that maybe they already know what they want to go into work if they want to do a trade. And, I mean, in the age of the internet, there are opportunities for them to maybe take something that's non-traditional and still make a living and make an income, or maybe find happiness without being measured just by what they scored on, you know, an SAT or something like that.
At the end of the day, I'm not enough of an education professional, and I hate that phrase, but you know what I mean, to know what's the best way to really teach people. I sometimes feel the best way to reach people and talk to them about things I'm trying to let them know. And I think that's one of the things is maybe an elected system of school administrators or HISD administrators isn't the best way to have an education. I don't know. Maybe it is. But either way, this is a critical juncture where the method is going to be totally changed and taken out of the hands of voters and given to, you know, a power here. The Texas state education, right? I mean, yeah, you'll vote for your state congressman, and he has how many other issues to be concerned about besides how your local school's being ran? Well, at least otherwise, if your local school's being ran in a way you don't like, you're a lot closer to that school board exec that you elected that's in your neighborhood or in the 5 miles away. I don't know, but at the end of the day, the point was supposed to be education, and let's see. So I wanted to get into this horrible aspect of education. We've talked about a lot of, that line between indoctrination and education and the role of the state within it. And this one's pretty brutal. They have nice names, though. And this is here in the United States, in Illinois. They have gentle names, these spaces. They have spaces that they put children in. They call them the reflection room.
Or I've seen them call timeout rooms.
The cool down room.
Is it the pokey?
The calm room.
Are these the padded rooms though? Because I've seen a few. They're kind of different.
They're unique.
I've heard about these for a few years now.
But shut inside them in public schools across Illinois, children as young as 5 wail for their parents, scream in anger, and beg to be let out. The students, most of them with disabilities, scratch the windows, tear at the padded walls, throw their bodies against the locked doors. They wet their pants. Some children spend hours inside these rooms, missing class time. Through it all, adults stay outside the door, writing down everything that happens. What do you think about that?
What is this, Nazi experiment? That's so weird, man. Solitary confinement messes anybody up, and for a child who is
5 years old,
you're not equipped. You're not equipped for that sometimes, especially if you have separation anxiety. Might be why you're acting out in the first place.
Documents more than 20,000 incidents from the 2017 to 2018 school years alone.
I just don't understand what good that could possibly do. Like, what's the... You know what I mean? I mean, I guess they're getting this data, but what good is that data? Like,
I think it's just out of sight, that's really what they're just like, oh, get them away. But it's also this kind of mentality we've had for so long of just punishing.
And how can you just sit there and write down some of the things? We're going to get a little deeper in this. I know we don't have much time. So we talked about 20,000 incidents in just 1 year. Out of those 20,000, just 12,000 included enough detail to determine why they were even put in the timeout. So barely more than half even said the reason. You asked why. The reason the kids were even there. So if you don't know the reason they're there, how are you going to know what their goal is, right?
I mean, is that legal?
In Illinois it is, maybe elsewhere. We talk about kids in...
It's definitely happened in Texas, too, for sure.
Yeah. So turns out they did over 120 interviews with parents trying to get into the details of this. And I'm going to skip through this because this is a tremendous investigation based on records from more than 100 districts. They found seclusion, as they call it, used in every school across the state and by a range of employees, from teachers and aides to social workers and security personnel. So you could be 5, and this is what we're talking about, not just the school to prison pipeline, but the school prison without a pipeline.
No pipeline needed.
Yeah. So there's a few little particular ones here. There's one instance, I'd like to call it the I'm crying alone thing. About 20 minutes after he was put into one of the school's quiet rooms, a 5-foot square space made of plywood and cinder block, a 9-year-old, Jace, wet his pants. An aide watching from the doorway wrote that down in the log, noting it was 10:53 a.m. on February 1st. School aides had already taken his shoes and his shirts. Imagine this. You're at school, and they take your shoes and shirts and put you in a room like this. Then
I'd be flipping out.
Now he's wet his pants because he's probably terrified or whatever. He's a child in this environment. Who knows why? We don't have to know why. We know it's cruel. And anyway, so he takes off his wet pants. He's not going to sit there in his peed pants, and he wipes them in the floor and sits down in a corner like he's trying to clean up the mess. And he screams at 10:56, "I'm naked!" And they don't respond. They write it in the log. And they say, close the door for privacy. By 11, he had also defecated and was smearing feces on the wall. The adults intervened, according to the log. They watched, and nobody intervened, I'm sorry. They watched and took notes. So by 11, this is what happened. At 11:15, dancing in feces, doing the twist, is what they wrote in the log. "I need more clothes," he called out. "We know," an aide answered. Jace banged on the walls and tried to pry open the door. He sat against the wall crying for his mom. 11:42. Let me out of here. I'm crying alone. So, you know, this is your state. I mean, not yours, but this is the state government at work, you know. And we've talked about some horrible things in Houston, but at the same time, everybody thinks everything's okay, right? They might go see the open house. I mean, this is the beginning of people's relationship with authority. And you wonder about blowback later in these people's lives, you know. Never mind trauma. And there's so many more stories this thing gets into. Some even worse, you know. Ambulances being called, etc. So I can't only stomach so much of this.
I'm going to throw out a couple more headlines, guys. In case you didn't know, the Bolivia is undergoing a coup backed by the U.S. government and Western governments. We're going to have to wait to get into that more on Monday and next Friday, but it's definitely an important issue. Find out more on that on the Free Thinker Radio Facebook page. And, you know, typically people think when we say that this show's about uncensored news beyond the left, beyond the right, beyond the mainstream, it's because despite appearances, the left, the right, the Democrats, the Republicans, they work together to work against you. And when it comes down to it, they will work together, including just recently extending the NSA's spying powers once again, you know, continuing to do this. Both parties, both presidents, since 9/11, expanding the Section 2015 of the Patriot Act, which allows for spying of Americans' data. So they might argue all day in front of the cameras, but when it comes down to it, when it comes to war, when it comes to spying, when it comes to screwing you over, they work together. So don't forget that. Oh, yeah, and
so we have to work together.
Epstein's guards got arrested.
Yeah, Epstein's guards were arrested. Prince Andrew retiring from public life after giving a disastrous interview claiming that sometimes he's a little too honorable, and that's why he spent time with Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, that's pretty crazy. We'll have to get more into that.
He must have been trying to help him out.
Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself. And,
a long time ago, we talked about
kill himself. No, he did not.
Long time ago, we talked about the control of your feed by algorithms. Now it's in the Wall Street Journal, just in case you didn't believe. So. You
heard it first. All right, guys, we're going to leave it there. This has been Free Thinker Radio on 90.1 KPFT Houston. We'll see you on Monday and Friday. Peace.
This last song is STM by Ganesha.